Can I ask if there's any apologies this morning?
Good morning, Convener. Thank you. We have no apologies. All members are present. Thank you.
In that case, then, Karen, could you present the report, please?
Before we start, sorry, Convener, I think we've got declarations of interest to go through, and if you're happy, I can just take members through that and just.
Apologies, please do so, Brian.
Just if members have any declarations they wish to make in relation to this item, if they can do so now. I don't see any, so I think that's no declarations, Convener. And the next part before we go into the main business is just the minute of the meeting from 22nd of August, just for approval as a correct record. Are members happy?
Happy to agree.
Okay, thank you. That being done, then, Convener, we can move on to the report. And I think, as you said, you invited Ms. Algie to take us through the report.
Thank you, Brian. Please go ahead, Ms. Algie.
Thank you, Convener. This report introduces our annual report from our external auditors, EY. Audit Committee is the appropriate governance body to give consideration to the report and to our annual accounts, which are now audited. If considered appropriate, following the update from the report from EY, the committee will then be asked to recommend the accounts to Council later this morning for approval. I'll keep my introduction to this report brief because I know my colleagues from EY are here to present their report and to answer any questions that committee may have. In your papers, you have the report and the papers from EY, along with a copy of our audited accounts, I should say. And in providing their annual audit, EY consider a range of matters, including our accounts and the financial governance of these. It's good to know that, as always, these have been signed off without qualification. EY also consider how well we have delivered on 4 key areas of financial sustainability, financial management, governance and transparency, and value for money. And a summary of their findings is provided on page 14 of your papers, and I'm sure EY will take you through these in more detail in respect of all of these different areas. I would say that it's disappointing to note that the financial sustainability area is flagged as red, but that shouldn't be a surprise given the reports that we presented to committee with a fairly significant financial gap of £69 million over the next 4 years. The report also assesses our overall response to the recent best value audit, noting the good work that we've done to date, but also the fact that we have more to do to ensure that the impact of that work is delivering what we aim to achieve. It's a detailed report which colleagues will take you through, and I think in summary the report helpfully sets out the challenges that we are currently working to address. It's difficult to see these set out and written down in this way, but it is reassuring that we're working to address these challenges and that there's a good range of good work already underway, which is recognised by EY, and the fact that we are responding to them. We've still got a lot of work to do now to then deliver on them, and that's what's really important and what we really need to focus on. So you'll see in the report that EY provides a recommended action plan, and that's Appendix D of your papers on page 63. We have accepted all of the recommendations, and the management response to these is contained in your papers as well. So Convener, I'll stop there and hand over to our EY colleagues, Stephen Reid and Grace Scanlon, if that's okay with yourself.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and good morning, Convener and members. As Karen said, this report very much summarises the results of our external audit of the 21-22 financial statements. The report at the current time is presented to the committee in draft to support the committee in exercising their scrutiny function over the financial statements and to aid discussion with officers on the financial statements and what's disclosed before members today. Once the financial statements have been approved and signed, I do intend to issue an unqualified opinion on the financial statements, and we will update this report, the audit results report, the annual audit report. We'll update this report, issue it in final form, and it will also be passed to Audit Scotland for publication on their website, as is the standard practice. Now, the report falls into two broad areas. Firstly, the consideration and audit of the financial statements, and then, as Karen referred to, consideration of the wider scope dimensions of public audit. I want to pick up on the audit of the financial statements and highlight a few key aspects of the findings from that element of our work, and then I'll pass to my colleague Grace Scanlon to pick up on the key messages from the wider scope considerations before she then passes back to me to allow me to conclude, to make some concluding remarks. So, as officers have said, we do intend to issue an unqualified opinion on the financial statements. Through the work on the financial statements, we've identified a number of adjustments, and those are summarised within the appendices, which I'll come back to very shortly. In relation to the key findings from the audit, we obviously conduct our audit to a certain level of materiality, and we set that out in the audit plan that was presented to committee earlier in the year. There's been no material changes to the scope of our audit plan or indeed the materiality levels used, and we report to committee all differences through the audit process identified of £250,000 or more. So in relation then to the key findings in respect of the numbers within the financial statements, we have made one specific recommendation around the need for the Council to enhance the quality assurance arrangements in respect to the preparation and review of the financial statements, taking into account the consideration of any best practice guidance, particularly issued by Audit Scotland. And as Karen said, that recommendation has been accepted. In relation to the key areas of work around management override and revenue recognition and expenditure recognition, we have no significant matters to draw to committee's attention as a result of our work. In respect of the valuation of property, plant and equipment, again, we did identify some elements for improvement within this area, and we have made a recommendation within the action plan of the need for officers just to give additional consideration to particularly impairment reviews, so where assets may have been impaired during the course of the year. We historically did note some improvement in the arrangements for accounting for property, plant and equipment, and unfortunately this year we did find one or two areas which suggest some increased focus on improvement in those areas is required going forward, particularly in relation to the need to improve communication between property services and the finance team. One additional national issue this year, so this is not a Falkirk Council specific area, was in respect of how local authorities across the UK account for infrastructure assets. And we have included some information in the report on pages 19 and 20 of the report in respect of the work that we did to gain assurance around the disclosures on infrastructure assets. The Council chose to use the statutory overrides which were permissible in Scotland for local authorities in line with many other local authorities. We have just noted that these will not be permanently in place, and therefore in future years the Council will need to do some work to enhance the evidence and records which it holds in relation to infrastructure assets to allow the future auditors to be content with the values disclosed. We've also concluded in respect of going concern that we have concurred with management's assessment of going concern. We did work with management to enhance a number of the disclosures within the financial statements, but there was no significant disagreement in relation to the concept of the Council continuing as a going concern. In relation to the adjustments which I've referred to, there are both adjusted differences, so differences that were identified during the audit which management has adjusted, and there are differences identified during the audit which management has not adjusted, and those are set out on page 61, and that's my numbering of the report within Appendix E. The areas that have been adjusted are set out at the top of that page, and those are significant values of adjustments, and those are the areas which I'm referring to. If there had been enhanced quality assurance arrangements, those ought to have been detected prior to the financial statements being passed to us to audit, particularly in relation to the adjustments number 1 and 2. Adjustment number 3 was a timing difference, so of course management couldn't actually have known about that at the time they prepared the financial statements. The unadjusted differences at the bottom of the page, page 61, are individually and cumulatively not material to the financial statements. That's the view taken by officers, and a view that I am also content with. So that was very much all, Convener, that I wanted to say on the financial statement aspects. Let me now pass to Grace to take committee through some of the key messages within our wider scope considerations.
Thank you, Stephen, and good morning, everybody. Before I start talking through the wider scope conclusions, it's probably helpful just to explain that the context for much of what we've said in the report is, as Karen said, that best value assurance report that was issued in January this year, and the prospect of a return visit very early in the next programme, so likely to be sometime into 2023. We've been your auditors for 6 years now, and so while we've had some pretty tough conversations, and as Karen was saying, some more pretty difficult messages, we have ended up really caring about Falkirk Council and about the communities that you serve. So when we are delivering those tough messages, it is because when we read the next Best Value Follow-up report, we want it to be positive and really reflecting the outcome of some of the hard work that we know that you and officers have put in. And if I start there with the comments on our best value follow-up, then we can see that it has been good progress and a lot has been achieved in what is a very short period of time, particularly when we think about the impact of the elections. And it included in that the new council plan, the induction programme that was put in place for new elected members, a really important financial strategy, and actually just the refreshed senior leadership team within the council. But the biggest risk and challenge to the council is financial sustainability and making significant savings. And we note on page 4, and as Karen said earlier, that budget gap is now 69 million in the period to be achieved by 2027. And that really is an unprecedented financial challenge. And the word that we use in the report is stark. So until there is that agreed balanced budget in place for at least the next financial year, then we can't yet conclude on the impact of the actions that have been taken around about collective leadership and how that will play into some very difficult decision making. You'll also see on page 4 that our assessment of RED for financial sustainability reflects the degree of risk and uncertainty that is out with the council's control, which could increase that gap further and therefore the ability to deliver services. And we don't underestimate how difficult the next period will be, particularly for elected members. Within financial management, we were satisfied that financial monitoring remains robust, but we've highlighted that there is pressure on the financial capacity of the council, and we are now close to the end of those big one-off measures that helped balance the budget and protect reserves to this point. We also reflect in that section the important work that is underway to update and review the council's capital plans and ensure that they are affordable and reflect what now feel like prioritised priorities. On governance and transparency, we note that the key features of good governance remain in place. The significant changes to the membership of this committee has coincided with new best practice from SIPFA. SIPFA are the main public sector accountancy body, and that means that there is an opportunity to conduct a self-assessment against that good practice guidance and identify any training requirements so that you can be as effective as possible over the current term. We note in that section that 2 accidents occurred during the financial year that have been investigated by the Health and Safety Executive and have resulted in improvement notices. This has been disclosed appropriately within the financial statements, but an internal investigation following one of the accidents highlighted concern about the culture and working practices in the service. We also note that we have received a number of whistleblowing allegations over the last 3 years that have been investigated both by our forensic specialists and the council's corporate fraud team. But the number and the nature of the concerns expressed about the culture really present a reputational risk to the council, and so we've therefore recommended that that controllable environment should be subject to a review that's overseen by this committee. Finally, in value for money, we're reflecting that performance reporting arrangements remain a work in progress, but the performance generally remains good, and over half of the indicators used in the local government benchmarking framework remain above the national average. Stephen, do you want to take over and talk through the recommendations?
Thank you, Grace. So very briefly, committee, as Karen set out, we have made a number of recommendations, 11 in total in respect of the 21-22 external audit, and those are summarised within Appendix D, the action plan from page 50 through 53, my numbering of the report. In relation to the recommendations, there are 4 grade 1 recommendations, with the remainder being grade 2. All recommendations have received positive management responses. And finally, convener, it just goes for me to say that this is the final year of our appointment as the Council's external auditor, which has meant, due to the coronavirus pandemic, that we have been in post for 6 years. We demit office on the signing of the opinion on these financial statements, and I would just want to take this opportunity to thank the finance team, officers and members for the support not only this year but over the term of our appointment, and I wish the Council well in its future endeavours. With those comments, very happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate your hard work over the last 6 years. I'll now open to any questions, starting with the Council Leader, Cecil.
Thank you, convener, and I think as the only pre-existing member of this committee, just want to say thank you to EY for all the work that they've done over the last 6 years. I feel as if they've become part of the Falkirk family, so I really understood what Grace was saying, because we have been through quite a journey over that period, and it's not been an easy journey, but I think having worked with yourselves has helped us to actually get on to what I think is now the right trajectory, and where we need to be able to take the Council. So I thank you very much for that, and I'm sure you'll make as an easier transition to your colleagues in Audit Scotland as we move forward. I think having an unqualified opinion is something that is very positive to the Council, and it's something that we should recognise as that. But the account does give a very stark projection of where we are, particularly financially, and that's something that's been highlighted by the auditors, particularly around the huge risk around financial sustainability. And I did have a couple of questions that I just wanted to maybe tease out a little bit more. Just you talked about the financial sustainability being the biggest risk to the Council. I'm just wondering if you can maybe articulate a wee bit more of what that means. The other change was from governance and transparency. Last year we had determined that as green. We've now reduced to amber. I just wonder if you can maybe give a bit of clarification around that as well, just so that we're clear as the Audit Committee and what that means and what we need to do to be able to get that into a better position. And I've got a couple other questions after that, convener, if you don't mind.
That's fine. If you'd like to answer.
Will I take these? In terms of the financial, I could hear myself. That's horrible. In terms of the financial sustainability being the risk, then I suppose that in that we are reflecting over the last at least I would say 3 or 4 years. Then we have made recommendations and made comments around about accepting some of the budget decisions that are put to Council during the budget working groups and on the actual day of the budget, because every time that the Council elects to use reserves or elects to not take savings, then it increases the pressure on future years. So and I guess that is a factor in why the scale of the budget gap is the way it is. So I guess that until that the financial stability working groups are up and running, and until that budget process is concluded, then we still consider this to be a significant risk. Within the report, we've also reflected that a number of other councils have actually got to a position where they have got multi-year financial plans. Now, those won't be set in stone. They aren't, tying the hands of the council for future years, but it does give that roadmap to financial balance. And I think that that's what's missing at Falkirk Council just now, just to get that agreement about a longer term strategy for the finances. In terms of governance and transparency, then there was really one big factor in terms of the change from green to amber, and that was around about the level of allegations and the culture concerns that within some of the services. And so I think it was around about, we don't normally get allegations that come back year after year after year. And so it's just making sure that the council can kind of shine a light in that and make sure that that's dealt with appropriately.
Thanks, Grace. That's helpful, and that kind of covered off one of my other questions, particularly around the whistleblowing. And I know that the services are very focused on doing a piece of work around that, to do a deep dive and to make sure that we do get to the bottom of that and deal with it as well. I'm pleased that we still sit positively with our performance. But obviously there is a need to look at continuing to keep that and maintain that. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts around the challenge of being able to maintain that performance under a very difficult financial climate going forward, and to if there's any focus that we should be having and being able to try to maintain that.
I think this is where it gets really difficult in terms of the decisions that are lying ahead and about where your priorities really are. So sometimes we probably expect that some of those services, the performance won't be maintained at such a good level because that's the financial reality. But it is about that kind of maturity and being comfortable about where, where services are being protected and prioritised. Some of the performance indicators that are used within the local government benchmarking framework are around cost, and some of them are in terms of the individual cost of services. And actually, historically, that's been some of the red indicators for the council in terms of the cost per visit to things like museums and libraries and sports centres. So that's an area that can be tackled. The other than services then is around about satisfaction, so the satisfaction of the public with the council, so that it remains in the gift, and is around about communicating well about the decisions that you're making.
Okay, thank you, Grace. That's helpful. I'm aware that others are going to ask questions, so I've got two questions here really for management, convener. One is maybe there is a need to have further discussions around risk appetite, and having a wider discussion in the council on that as we go into difficult financial times. And the final question was, the last time we still had concerns over the staffing of the audit, the audits section, because there were still some vacancies into whether or not we are now fully staffed up, because again that could be something that will be able to help in relation to some of the issues around whistleblowing and culture.
Thank you, Councillor Meikle-John. Amanda, could you address that, please?
Yes, thank you, convener. So in terms of risk, firstly, we will be bringing, as you'll have seen from the audit papers for the 7th of November audit committee meeting, we're bringing 2 papers on risk to the audit committee for further discussion. Those papers recognise that we still have some more work to do and some more discussions to have. We had been looking at setting up some risk workshops. However, we're very conscious at the moment of the pressure that's been put on officers and members, particularly around the financial sustainability piece coming into the budget session in February, March time. So we have considered sort of deferring those risk workshops until after the budget has been approved. And that's really just to recognise that we've set up at the moment, fortnightly meetings of the Financial Strategy Group, for example. There's already quite a lot of asks from members for their time, for some more training, things like that. So we have got that work on our radar, and you'll see that in the reports coming to the November Audit Committee. In terms of staffing for the audit section, we now have our full complement of staff, and that the vacancies have been filled. Unfortunately, our internal audit manager has been off ill for some time. She's absolutely desperate to come back, and we are absolutely desperate to get her back. And we're hoping that she will be fit to come back soon. But that is just the sort of one lingering issue in terms of staffing at the moment.
Thank you, Amanda. Does the Leader of the Opposition now wish to ask questions?
I hate to tell you, but I've got 2 sides of A4 worth of questions. Thankfully, one or two of the issues Councillor Meikle-John has already addressed to some extent, but I would like to return as a new member of this council, not having been here through the previous 5 years. It does give me a considerable amount of concern that this council now is going to have to be picking up the tab for the decisions that have not been made, as you have said, Grace, in your introduction. I think that we need to be given some guidance, some more guidance, I think, in terms of how we can deliver the £69 million worth of cuts, which we do not want to deliver, in a short space of time. When it should have been done previously. Now, you mentioned that this is due to decisions not taken previously. Having been looking back over a number of meetings in the past administration, I think there are 2 issues. In some cases, it's decisions not being taken, but in other cases, it's decisions being taken and then not implemented. And I wonder if you could say something about that. Or perhaps I'm directing that in the wrong direction.
Yes, I think I'd like to pick up that question, Convener. I suppose in terms of the solution to the 69 million gap, I mean, the proposals need to be brought forward and developed by officers. That's work that we are engaged in. An update on that was given to the last meeting of the Council in relation to the financial strategy report that came forward. So it's not that I don't think it's guidance we seek from our external auditors on that. That is for us. It's a matter for us to come up with the proposals on a multi-year basis so that we can both bridge the gap for 23-24 and also have indicative budgets for future years, which is a point which is emphasised in the audit report, and one which I think is very, very important. So the financial strategy report is a very important stepping stone towards that. There's a lot of work being done within the council at the moment. The financial strategy group has a critical role in ensuring that as a council, we are more able to create that shared narrative about how we tackle that multi-year challenge that we have in front of us. In terms of your second point, Councillor Hannah, about the non-delivery of decisions taken, I think that if there are specific issues which you'd identified in that regard, then clearly that's something that as officers we'd want to be clear about, and then we can address them on a case-by-case basis. But I think in general, when the council has taken decisions, budget decisions, these have been implemented, and that would certainly be, that's an important part of how we move forward, both that we agree the approach for future years and that we implement it thoroughly when that agreement is reached. Thank you.
Councillor Hannah.
If I may come back on that, I think that just to pull out an example that we have here on page 41, that's page 31 of the EY report, but it's page 41 of our papers. We've got references to the zero-based budgeting. Now, there have been a number of decisions about the need to have a programme of zero-based budgeting. There's the only report, as far as I'm aware, that has come forward is on transport. And that came to us quite recently. There's clearly the potential to recognise, to find reasonable amounts of savings if we expedite a zero-based budgeting strategy, which clearly has not been done. And it would be useful to know when we're going to be addressing the question of the children's services, which seems to be the second in the list to be done.
Thank you, Convener. As officers, we're very clear that that decision was brought forward by the council. I think significant work has been done, albeit we haven't achieved as significant savings as I think all of us may have hoped. But there is a report coming forward, I think, to the next council meeting in December. I'm just looking to Amanda to confirm that, the next council meeting in December, which will set out both the work that has been done and our future proposals in relation to how we take that forward. So it is the case that ZBB can provide an important element of bridging the gap. Thank you.
Councillor Hannah.
Thank you. I would just like to go back to page 14 of the papers. Again, it's the overall summary of the report, and I would wonder if you could say a little more about the question of governance and transparency. I mean, we have here a situation where, in relation to financial sustainability, last year's report was red, this year's report, it's red. In relation to financial management and value for money, both have remained at amber. And disappointingly, and I think Karen, I used the word as well, the governance and transparency has deteriorated. It has gone from green to amber. And that seems to me to be a matter of considerable concern, that not only are we not improving as we would have hoped we would be improving, but we are actually going backwards. Now, the series of whistleblowing allegations that's referred to there clearly is part of the reason for this. But I think it would be useful if we could get some more information about the actions that are going to be taken, because to me, a series of whistleblowing allegations suggests a systemic problem. It's not just a simple, because nobody's alleging that there is actual fraud going on or anything of that sort. There's nothing being said. There has been no wrongdoing found, but a series of allegations suggests there is something distinctly wrong with the systems that are in place. And I think it's important we are upfront about that and addressing that. And I would like to know the ways in which that's going to be addressed.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Convener. Convener, I think there are two parts to how we're responding to that. One is looking at the fraud investigation reports that have taken place as a result of those whistleblowing allegations. As you say, there are no suggestions of fraud being found, and there's no evidence of that from those investigations. But there have been recommendations in terms of the processes and tightening up the processes. And I can assure committee that the actions that came out and were recommended by our fraud investigation have been put in place. The other thing that we have done is we have asked our internal audit team to carry out a further audit of the areas of work to ensure that those procedures and the changes we've made continue to be implemented. So that's the process part. The other part and the references to cultural issues, there's a very big part of this is about people and how people manage those processes and how they work with each other. And we have an action plan being developed along with our trade union colleagues. We've got a working group now set up that will develop an action plan. We will then put in place an improvement group who will oversee that action plan, and the improvement group will involve our trade union colleagues as well, so that we get direct feedback, not just from the perspective of managers, but also from the perspective of employees on the front line who will feed into those processes. And that work is now being taken forward and actively being developed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have you any further questions, Councillor Hannah?
Not at this time.
Then I open it up. If anyone else has questions, please.
I note what my colleague and leader of the council said about the relationship that we've had with EY over the last few years. I'm looking to find out what mechanisms are in place to ensure the smooth transition from EY to our new external auditors. If we could have some information about that, please.
Certainly, Convener, I'm very happy to pick that up. Your new external auditors are, of course, Audit Scotland, the Audit Services division within Audit Scotland, and Audit Scotland itself has issued guidance to all auditors in terms of the steps that ought to be taken to ensure a smooth transition. And of course, ourselves, like all other auditors in the public sector, will follow that guidance. Some of the key elements of the handover process will be meeting with your new auditors to give them a briefing on the council and indeed the work of the most recent audit, so the 21-22, the audit we're discussing today. And again, Audit Scotland, as an incoming new external auditor, will also undoubtedly ask for access to our audit files for this financial year's audit, and which we will grant. So those are some of the key elements. I'm sure that Audit Scotland will also undertake a suite of meetings across officers and members to get to know the council as well, but that's very much a matter for them. But those are some of the elements of the transition that we'll be involved in directly.
I thank you, and I thank you for your services. Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions?
Convener, I appreciate I've already spoken, but if I've got a further question, if
yes, go ahead, Chancellor.
This will maybe be a very difficult one, but as EY are our outgoing auditors, it's probably pertinent for them to perhaps maybe give a bit of comment on that. Just also taking into the national picture of local authorities. We are in Falkirk a minority administration, and we were in the previous administration a minority administration. Therefore, politically, we are not in charge of our own decisions, and there obviously needs to be that collaboration across. And often we can be left with decisions of others in that. So I was just wanting to ask a wee bit more, because it is highlighted within our best value report around that that collective leadership and how important that is going to be going forward in order to be able to get good decisions from the council.
Very happy to add some comments on that. Yes, I do note the position in terms of the minority administration, which is not new and is not unique across Scotland in terms of local government political administrations. I think, as Councillor Meiklejohn pointed to, the best value report that was issued for the council was very clear. That it is the responsibility of all elected members to deliver best value. So not just those that are the administration, but all elected members of all local authorities to deliver best value. And I guess my comments would be that that's now more important than ever, that all elected members work together to deliver on what are going to be some incredibly difficult decisions, but decisions which are critical. The financial position facing the council is, as we've said, stark. And unless members work together with officers and with each other to make those difficult decisions, then the financial outlook is going to be even more challenging and is simply not sustainable.
Thank you, Councillor Meter-John. If I may, I just have two final questions, unless anyone else wishes to ask anything. No?
If I may,
Yes,
Convener,
go ahead, Councillor.
just in relation to the issue of collaborative leadership, on page 5 of your report, it's page 15 on our papers, there's reference to a comprehensive induction programme for elected members, which I have been very much involved with and have very much appreciated. It has been good. I would agree with you on that one. But you also make reference to that being complemented by external support on equalities and on collaborative leadership. And I would be interested to know the actions that are being taken, at what this external support is, and what involvement councillors may have in that.
Thank you, Councillor Hannah. Karen?
Yes, thank you, Convener. Happy to pick that up. Excuse me, we had one of our legal companies that we work with came in and provided a presentation on equalities for members about the equality duties of members. So all members were invited to that particular event. We've also had a former chief executive of a Scottish local authority working with corporate management team and chief officers more widely on the process of collaborative leadership. We've received a report from that, which we are now in the process of implementing. We have a wide action plan of activities, and some of those were reported to members at the executive in August as part of our best value update on collaborative leadership. And you will see from those that there is a lot of work currently underway to take some of that forward. We're also looking at additional events, and there's one coming up next week on equal opportunities, and there will be some further events on different forms of training, as well as the less formal training around the budgets and other matters that members have actually asked for some additional support on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. My two questions are quite simple for the officers. I'd be pleased to know they're quite simple. Recommendation 7 in the report on page 65. I'm just wondering when and how we will be carrying out this self-assessment as a committee. And my second question kind of runs into that. You mentioned internal audit ongoing and the working group. I just wonder when if we'll get a report from that. Thank you. Amanda, I understand you can answer my first question.
Yes, thank you, Convener. The Financial Management Code is certainly something that is on our to-do list in terms of taking members and officers through that sort of self-assessment process. Again, it's something that we haven't taken forward at this point, not because we don't plan to or because we've forgotten about it, but just because of the focus that we have had on the financial sustainability issue. And I think that goes back to some of the things that the Chief Executive has said in previous meetings, that it's so critical that we resolve that issue, because it really takes up so much time and energy for officers and members to continually be trying to tackle it. And that means that it leaves us with a gap in terms of our ability to pick up other things that also need to be done. So I don't have a time frame for picking it up, but I can give some reassurance that it is on our list. We are pulling together a finance improvement plan that's part of the work that we plan to do as part of that plan, and we will be coming back to members on it.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, the second question was about the internal audit that's ongoing, and the fact that you've got an improvement group with the trade unions. I just wondered if we're going to get a report on that.
Thank you, convener. Apologies for not hearing that the first time. The work that is ongoing is there's a pilot period to allow us to assess what actions need to be taken. That work's been done with trade unions as we right now. That is being worked through, and the improvement plan will be put in place thereafter with an ongoing improvement group involving the trade unions. It wasn't our intention to report this to committee because it's very much an operational matter, but I would be happy to provide updates to committee at appropriate stages.
Thank you, Karen. I would be interested to know at least the outcome. Thank you. Is there any other questions or any other comments? In that case, I will bring the meeting to a close. Thank you very much for attending all.